In the summer of 1999, a 12-year-old girl stepped into a rusted bear trap deep in the woods. She should have died out there, but something enormous and human-like saved her and vanished without a trace. Rachel Ren was 12, the summer she got sent to her grandfather's cabin near Mount Shasta. Her parents were in the middle of a bitter divorce, and neither had time for her, so they packed her off to Earl Ren, a retired logger who lived alone off a gravel road surrounded by miles of thick forest. Earl was a hard man, lean, grey-bearded, didn't talk much unless he had something worth saying. He cooked with cast iron, fixed things with duct tape, and didn't own a TV. Rachel was quiet too, not because she was shy, but because she liked it that way. She spent most of her time drawing. Animals, trees, old cabins, anything she saw, she sketched. The forest gave her peace. The first time they walked the property line, Earl gave her one warning. "Don't go past the creek," he said, pointing with his chin. "The woods remember what men forget." She nodded, but didn't ask questions. She figured he meant bears. Or maybe he was just being dramatic. Either way, she didn't feel afraid. The woods felt alive, but not dangerous. The creek wasn't much. Shallow water over smooth stones, easy to step across. Still, Earl's warning stuck with her. She followed trails, climbed low ridges, watched deer from behind trees, but always stopped at that water line. Until one afternoon, Earl had gone into town for supplies. Rachel sat out back with her sketch pad, drawing the tree line. A deer appeared across the field. She followed it, quietly, like she'd seen on nature shows, and before she realized it, she was past the creek. The trees on that side grew closer together. The air was thicker, quieter. Even the birds seemed to keep their distance. She wasn't scared, but she felt watched. She walked a little further, just enough to see where the deer had gone. But that's when the accident happened. Rachel stepped lightly, following the deer tracks through the trees. She didn't mean to go far, just a quick look. But the forest on this side of the creek was thicker, older. Everything looked the same. Grey bark, green leaves, dead pine needles. It was easy to lose direction. She was watching the ground when it happened. There was a sharp snap, and a pain like fire shot up her leg. She screamed and dropped to the ground. A rusted bear trap had clamped around her ankle. Iron jaws, old but strong, bit through her skin and pinned her to the forest floor. She cried out again, louder. No one answered. The trap was wedged in tight. She tried to open it, but the metal didn't budge. Her hands were shaking. Blood soaked her sock and pooled around the trap. Minutes passed, then more. The woods were silent. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. Rachel screamed again. Still nothing. She tried to stay calm, but her breathing was fast and shallow. The pain was getting worse. Her leg throbbed. The edges of her vision began to blur. She lay back in the dirt, eyes to the sky, whispering for someone to help. Then she heard it, a low thump, then another, heavy, slow, measured. Branches cracked to her left. Something was moving through the trees, something big. Rachel sat up, panicked, unsure whether to call out or stay quiet. Then she saw it. A massive figure, 8 to 9 feet tall, stepped between the trees. Broad shoulders, long arms, dark fur from head to toe. Its face wasn't quite animal, but it wasn't human either. It didn't growl, didn't rush. It looked at her, then at the trap. It stepped closer. Rachel froze. The creature crouched beside her, careful and quiet. Its giant hand reached toward the metal jaws. It paused, looked at her face, then back at the trap. In one motion, it grabbed the trap's sides and pried it open. Rachel gasped, the pain flooding her senses. She tried to thank it, but her mouth wouldn't work. Her head felt heavy. As the creature gently lifted the twisted trap away from her leg, the last thing she saw was its eyes. Calm, watching, not wild. Then everything went dark. Rachel opened her eyes to darkness and stone. The pain in her leg was still there, but duller now. Not as sharp. She was lying on a bed of pine needles and dried leaves. Her ankle was wrapped in something soft and cool. Bark strips. Moss. Tied tightly but carefully. She didn't know where she was. The air smelled like damp earth and cedar. Dim light came from a crack above. Not much, just enough to see. She was inside a shallow cave. Beside her, a flat rock held a small pile of berries and a piece of hollowed bark filled with water. Her stomach turned from hunger and her throat was dry. She drank slowly, then chewed the berries. Bitter but fresh. Nothing spoiled. She sat up, groaning. Her head ached and her leg throbbed, but she was alive. Then she saw the figure at the entrance. It was sitting just outside the cave. Back straight, arms resting on its knees, staring out into the woods. Not moving, not growling, just still. The same creature from the trap. She froze, heart pounding. But it didn't look at her, didn't move toward her. It wasn't blocking the entrance. It wasn't pacing or snarling. It was watching the forest, like a guard on duty. Time passed. She didn't know how long. The creature didn't make a sound. Eventually, Rachel spoke. "Why did you help me?" No answer, not even a glance. She wasn't sure it could speak. Or maybe it chose not to. Later, she drifted off again. When she woke, the berries had been replaced with a different kind. Her bandage had been changed, this time with softer moss and a thick green leaf tucked underneath. Still, the creature stayed outside, silent, present. Rachel started to notice details. It didn't wear clothes, but its hair was thick and covered its entire body. Not mangy or filthy, more like a wild animal that knew how to stay clean. Its hands were huge, but its fingers were shaped like hers, just thicker, stronger. The way it moved wasn't clumsy. It had balance, control. One time, a distant rustle echoed from the woods. A branch snapped. The creature stood in a single motion and walked off into the trees. 10 minutes later, it returned and sat down again. Nothing had followed it back. Rachel didn't feel afraid anymore. She felt safe, watched over. It never came into the cave, never reached for her, never made a sound. But it stayed. It made sure she could drink, that she had food, that her wound stayed clean. Rachel didn't know what it was, animal, legend, or something else. But she knew one thing for sure. It wasn't there to hurt her. It had saved her life. And now, it was keeping her alive. By the second morning, Rachel could sit up without pain. Her leg still hurt, but she could move it. The swelling had gone down. The bandage, now made from thick leaves and packed with something cool and herbal, had been replaced again. She ate the berries left for her, drank the fresh water. The creature stayed nearby, just outside the cave, always watching the woods. She tested her weight. It hurt, but she could stand. Limping was possible. The creature saw her struggling and rose to its feet. It didn't touch her. It simply walked a few steps into the trees and looked back, then walked a little more. She understood. It wanted her to follow. Step by step, they made their way down the slope. Rachel leaned on branches, paused to rest, but never once felt afraid. The creature moved slowly, adjusting to her pace. It never looked impatient. It led her through the thick woods, avoiding steep ground, guiding her down the safest path. There was no trail, but the creature knew the land. It moved without hesitation, always clearing the way ahead. After nearly an hour, they reached the edge of the tree line. Rachel saw the open field ahead, her grandfather's property. The cabin roof was visible in the distance. Faint smoke rose from the chimney. She turned to the creature. It didn't step into the clearing. Instead, it stood still, looking at her. Then it raised one hand, palm open, fingers spread. A calm gesture. Not a wave, not a command, just goodbye. Rachel's throat tightened. "Thank you," she whispered. It blinked once, then turned and walked back into the forest without a sound. She watched it disappear behind the trees. Then she limped forward into the clearing. Her leg throbbed with every step, but she pushed on. Halfway across the field, she heard her name. "Rachel!" It was her grandfather's voice, rough, panicked, calling from the porch. She raised her arm and waved. He dropped what he was holding and ran toward her. When he reached her, he dropped to his knees and held her tight. She could feel his hands shaking. "I thought I lost you," he said. She didn't know how to explain what had happened, not yet. But she looked back toward the tree line. It was quiet again. Whatever had saved her wasn't looking for attention. It just wanted her to be safe. Rachel was taken to the local clinic the same day. The doctor cleaned her wound and re-bandaged it. The ankle was badly bruised, but not broken. She'd need crutches for a few weeks. But what puzzled him most was how the wound had been treated before she got there. The wrapping, bark, moss, leaves, wasn't random. It was tight, layered, and packed in a way that kept the swelling down and the bleeding under control. The doctor said it looked like someone with survival training had done it. Rachel told him what happened. About the trap, about the creature that opened it, about the cave, the berries, the water, the quiet protection. The doctor looked at her kindly, but didn't say much. The sheriff came by too, took notes, asked questions. "Did you see who helped you?" "No. It wasn't a person." "What do you mean?" "It was big, covered in hair, like a man, but not a man." He closed his notebook and said maybe it was shock. Maybe a bear knocked the trap loose. Maybe she dreamed some of it while she was in pain. Rachel didn't argue, but she didn't change her story either. At home, Earl made her tea and let her talk. She told him everything. He didn't interrupt, just stared at the wall, arms crossed. When she finished, he finally spoke. "You're not the first Ren to see something out there." Rachel looked at him. Earl nodded. "Your Uncle John saw something once, long time ago. Said it watched him while he fished. Never told anyone but me. I saw one too, back in '63, hauling a deer carcass through the snow. Big, just like you said. We don't talk about it, but we don't forget it either." Rachel sat quietly. No one brought it up again. Not the sheriff, not the doctor, not her parents. But Earl knew, and she knew. Every summer after that, Rachel went back to the cabin. She never wandered too far, but she always visited the edge of the woods near the creek. Each time, she left something behind. A smooth stone, a small wooden carving, a feather tucked into the crook of a tree. And each time, something changed. Once the carving was gone, replaced by 3 stacked stones. Another year, she found a ring of pine cones laid in a perfect circle. Nothing threatening, nothing loud, just quiet science. Proof she hadn't been alone that day in 1999. and that something, or someone, remembered. In the summer of 2025, Rachel returned to the cabin. She was 38 now, married, a mother. Her daughter Lily was 8, curious, quiet, just like she'd been. It was Lily's first time at the property. Rachel had waited until she was old enough to understand the silence of the woods. They spent the morning on the porch, watching birds. That afternoon, they walked through the tall grass toward the tree line. The forest hadn't changed much. Rachel led her to the old creek bed, dry this time of year. On the far side, near a flat rock, Rachel pulled something from her coat pocket. It was a small piece of cedar, carved by hand, just one word etched into it. "Thank you." She placed it on the rock, then turned back toward the cabin with Lily. They didn't talk about it. Lily didn't ask. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Rachel walked out alone. The carving was gone. In its place were 3 smooth stones, stacked perfectly, balanced, intentional. She stared for a long time, said nothing. No movement in the trees, no sound in the dark. Just a quiet answer, left without fanfare. She smiled, not out of surprise, but understanding. She didn't need proof. She'd had it for years. Some things weren't meant to be captured, explained, or shown to the world. Some things were meant to be remembered. Rachel turned and walked back toward the porch. She looked once over her shoulder, then said softly, "A creature didn't just save my life. It gave me something to believe in,